Deputies.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Monday, March 30th City Council meeting of 2020. We know we have very limited folks here right now, but I would like to invite all of us to please rise for a Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silent meditation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again, welcome everyone to the Lincoln City Council. In accordance with LB 898, a copy of the Open Meetings Act is posted at the back of the chamber. The order of the business of the City Council is as follows. The clerk will call the items listed on the agenda under public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on an item should come forward after the clerk reads that item, and we are going to allow folks that want to participate in the public hearing to come into the chamber one at a time. The applicant and those in favor should speak first, then those opposing the application may make one short rebuttal. Each speaker should begin by stating name, address, and whether you are speaking of in favor of the item or in opposition to the item. Testimony is limited to 5 minutes per speaker. After all public hearings, the council will vote on resolutions and items listed under third reading on the second and last meeting of the month immediately prior to adjournment. Normally we do have public comment, but in light of the trying circumstances, we are encouraging everyone, if you have a public comment, to please share it with all of us on the City Council and email it to us in a safer fashion at councilpacket@lincoln.ne.gov. And Teresa, let's go on with the first item.
Okay, we ask those of the general public coming forward to testify to please clearly state your name, spell your name, give your address, and sign in on the sign-in sheet lying on the podium. We ask those individuals from city staff who are testifying to please state your name, title, and the department you work for. Our first item of business is our public hearing consent agenda, items 1 through 3.
Is there anyone that would like to testify on these items? Seeing none, I think we can vote.
If
I
not,
would
we
like
can-
to make a statement, though.
Of course, yes.
I would like to compliment the finance department for the CAFR. It was really well done, and it's good to see that our auditors think the same. And I just had to fill my time since I was at home, so I thought I would read the entire audit. But it was really well done. Thank you.
Well, we are proud of our finance and budget team because they
Much free time.
they have won awards in the past, and it's nice that they get the recognition that they so well deserve. So thank you for making that comment.
All right, we can vote on these items. Items 2A through C were introduced by Christensen.
So moved.
Second.
Introduced by Christensen, seconded by Washington. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Board,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Next then are our public hearing resolutions. Item 4A is Comp Plan Conformance 20001, application of Urban Development Director for a proposed amendment to the Lincoln Center redevelopment plan to add the 13th and O redevelopment project to include renovation and rehabilitation of existing buildings to add upper floor housing on property generally located at 1317, 1319, and 1325 O Street.
Good evening, members of the council. My name is Dan Marvin. I'm with the Urban Development Department. And what you have before you today, we're calling the Central Hotel Project because the taller building at one time served as a hotel. The project is located on 1317, 1319, and 1325 O Street. Project involves the rehabilitation of 3 buildings that currently have first floor uses. What they will do on the upper levels, what they will create 22 units, apartments. There will be 10 studio apartments, 8 one-bedroom, 1 bedroom with a den, and 2 two-bedroom units. It's been discussed about perhaps being able to create access to the roof on top of there, yet to decide whether that can be done. The goal here is to change the facade and bring it back to the original brick look. What you see before you is not the original brick look. It is a photoshopped of the building with bricks on it. So they haven't magically put the bricks on there. So this rendering actually is not accurate as to what it will be, because the building will actually look better than this, but this gives you some idea of what we're going for here. The project is consistent with the goals of the comprehensive plan, the downtown master plan, and the Lincoln Center redevelopment plan. I know that you've all received a letter from Tom Houston. He's the attorney on the project. For the purposes of this, we've received no opposition to that. Felt it was safe to be able to stay away from your meeting today, but I'm here to answer any of your questions.
Yes, Richard?
Quick question, maybe. The Lincoln Center redevelopment plan, is that part of the plan, comp plan? Is it a separate plan? Or
So-
what is the Lincoln Center redevelopment
So
plan that
it's an
we have
area.
to amend?
It's in the downtown area, which is the next item on your agenda, involves the Lincoln Center redevelopment area. So it's
Okay.
the downtown area. And when we come forward with a project like this, we have to amend the plan to include this project within the overall plan for the downtown.
Okay, so if someone wanted to put a gym on second floor, we would have to amend the plan?
No. What this allows then, by amending the plan, then for them to go through a redevelopment process, which will engage them with urban development so that then they can have access to tax increment financing.
Okay.
There's a
Isn't the
redevelopment,
redevelopment plan just a guide, or is it a formal document that we have to amend?
it's a document that we have to amend every time we add a project into the downtown area.
Okay.
Okay, Sandra?
I would like to just go on the record of encouraging rooftop use, and also, if it's at all possible, to encourage the applicant to put a green roof in,
Okay,
so that we can increase our green footprint.
okay. Noted. Any other questions?
Benny?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Marvin, would you run those numbers again for me? How many studios, how many?
So there will be 10 studio apartments, 8 one-bedroom apartments, one bedroom with a den, and 2 two-bedrooms, for a total of 22 units.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions?
This is a good thing.
Well, thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to testify on this item? Anyone in the other room that would like to testify on this item?
I see a
Shaking their
head
head no.
shake.
No one is. Okay.
We have 2 rooms.
Okay.
Rooms, okay.
We'll call the next item then, 4B, Comp Plan Conformance 20,002, Application of Urban Development for a proposed amendment to the Lincoln Center redevelopment plan, Antelope Valley redevelopment plan, and North 27th Corridor and Environment redevelopment plan to add the Greater Downtown Principal Corridors redevelopment project to enhance streetscape and other amenities to the principal corridors in downtown on publicly and privately owned property from 9th to 28th Streets and between the north side of P Street rights-of-way and the south side of the N Street rights-of-way, as well as the area between the west side of the 9th Street right-of-way and the east side of the 10th Street right-of-way from S to M Streets, generally located from N to P Streets from 9th to 28th and 9th to 10th Streets from M to S Streets.
Good evening, Dan Marvin, Urban Development. What you have before you is a district, it's a tax increment financing district that we will be using to rehabilitate some of the streetscape and some of the street areas within this corridor. The way the district works is there is a natural appreciation of the values within that district, and that appreciation allows those funds then to be used specifically for the project, which would include sidewalk repair and some street repairs. Have we ever done a project like this or districts? Yes, we have. North 27th Street is an example of a TIF district, and the bridge that was built on North 27th Street was financed in part through that process. We currently have a TIF district out on West O Street, and the improvements along the West O district are financed through a TIF district. I'm going to go through one of the reasons we've decided to bring this forward at this time is last year we were in meetings with the Lincoln Parks and Recreation, and they identified all of the green ash trees that are along O Street, and there are, I believe, over 40 green ash trees, and unfortunately the trees along O Street, they're all of the larger variety, and Parks and Rec is going to take those trees down this fall as a preventative effort to avoid them becoming dangerous trees. And one of the reasons that we'd like to create a TIF district, I'll just run through some pictures here, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but there are obviously places in the downtown that need resurfacing. You're obviously aware of the budget. The amount of money that we put towards sidewalk rehab in the city of Lincoln is about $1 million a year. I've been told by LTU that the backlog of sidewalk repair is perhaps as much as $80 million. So we need to find creative ways to do some sidewalk repair, and this would be one tool to be able to do that in the downtown. Along with sidewalk repair, there's some alleys in the district that could use, that have drainage problems, that could use some resurfacing, and we believe that we can use these as a tool to help take care of some of the alleyways in the downtown too. What's the actual map? This is the boundary that we're talking about. So on the eastern edge would be 28th Street. Why 28th Street? Because if you want to be able to do work within the intersection of 27th and O Street, you need to go a block beyond. And then at the base of the Harris Overpass would be the other end of the district. The blue area is the downtown, the downtown district that we just spoke about, and then the yellow area is the Antelope Valley redevelopment area. So we're amending two different plans to be able to expend these funds in this area. Each district would have its own funding stream, so the funds would not flow from one district to the other, but we can create a more uniform look by being able to do both districts together. There are some other funding streams along with this. Currently, within the CIP, urban development is putting through the general fund $200,000 a year for replacement of the irrigation system. There are some tree funding sources through the Parks and Rec Department, and there are some additional TIFs projects that will occur along in this area. The previous one would be an example of how this would happen. If a project came in as the hotel project comes in, then they would generate their own TIF within that, and there would be an expectation that they would contribute towards the streetscape that would fit within the master plan within this whole area. And then the district would not be covering that area directly in front of that property. So that's the way it would happen as additional projects were to come in.
Dan, would that also work for the alleyways as well?
So the alleyways,
Project?
for the alleyways, we think that there's a way of creating a funding stream to help fix some of the alleys, but one way would also include creating an assessment district from the property owners that abut that way, and then the district could then chip in and help contribute funds towards that. So there would be, again, trying to find multiple funding streams to pay for a project, because those would be, expensive to do all on their own. Let me open it up for questions. I know that you've received a letter from the Downtown Association. DLA has sent a letter. This did go before Planning Commission. There was no opposition there, and I think that there's been broad support. We've had a number of community engagement meetings. We did one at the Bourbon Theater. We did one at NeighborWorks for community input, and we've had a number of other meetings as well.
believe we also received an email from the Lincoln Haymarket Development Corporation in favor of the project.
Are there any questions for Dan? Richard?
Couple, might be good if I turn my mic on. A couple quick questions. One of them is, when we do the redevelopment, are we going to take away any of the parking spaces?
No, we will not take away parking. One of the issues, O Street is a federal highway, so the goal here is to try to be as efficient with the dollars that we have. We understand that if you were to go and start moving curbs, there would be a much elongated process towards doing anything as far as the roadway. But the crosswalks on a number of the intersections down in the downtown definitely need to be addressed. So our goal would be able to use some of this funding to help address some of the crosswalks without moving any of the curbs, which would trigger other additional costs for the project.
So we wouldn't be doing any lane closures or decreasing capacity in the streets?
No. I mean, obviously, when there's work being done in the street, there's some lane closures. But when you're asking, would there be permanent lane closures?
Right.
No.
Okay. And then a couple questions on how this is going to work. Is this TIF project longer than 15 years?
No.
Okay.
This is a 15-year project.
And then let's take the hotel project. Let's say it was going to generate, because of the increase in value, and it was going to generate
Probably 300,000.
300,000 in TIF. How much of that TIF do they have to give then to this project?
We're going to try to be proportional about it, and I don't have the exact number at this moment, but it's certainly not that amount of money. It would be a per-foot basis based on our estimates.
So if you have a TIF project involved in this area, you'll be taking some of your TIF money and putting it into the...
And that is, Councilman, that's pretty typical. On most of the projects that we do, we expect that there is some streetscape work that's done in front of the building. 9th and O Street's an example. There's a hotel going up there right now, and they will be contributing towards the streetscape project there. The Kindler Hotel did some work. They will be contributing towards streetscape. The skinny skyscraper that we have going up will also be paying towards streetscape too. Try to say that.
Streetscape. No, I understand on that, so, okay.
Yeah. And it seems like many of the same property owners and developers would also have an assessment on the alley if they had an alley behind.
Yes.
So not only will it be a streetscape, but there'll be an alley.
And there is within the downtown master plan. And again, we live in kind of another world here where we're talking about people getting together and doing things and having a lot of fun. But there is within the downtown master plan the idea of the music district, which is on 14th Street. So that's a key alley that is part of this. So we would have a vested interest in creating that kind of activity along 14th Street, and then in that alley that would extend back there to help develop the music district.
Right, okay, thank you.
Terrific. Any other questions?
I
Benny?
have one that's not related to this issue, but you mentioned the music district, and I drive by the Eagle parking garage quite often.
Yes.
Do you have any idea of the progress on that, or when we might see the plastic come down in a usable garage there?
I think Eagle originally was slated to open around January 1st. There's been a few more challenges in the building, delays related to construction and that sort of thing. I would expect that we've pushed it back about 2 months. Now we're looking at more like the end of February instead of the beginning of the year.
Okay.
So our goal would then to be able to move people that are on what we call Block 65, where the Sharp Block is.
Yes.
And then be able to move them into Eagle so that we would then, at that point, be slated to be able to build a garage in the downtown.
Thank you for the update.
Terrific. Any other questions for Dan? Is there anyone else that would like to testify on this item? Is there anyone else in the other room that would like to come on in and testify on this item? Nope. Okay. All right. We can move
All
on.
right, we'll go on to item 4C, accepting and approving the report of new and pending claims against the city for March 1st through the 15th, 2020. Is there anyone in the back room that would like to testify on a claim against the city?
Seeing none or hearing no one, we can go on.
We
Doesn't
have a
look like it.
high-tech system of watching for head shakes and nods, and I don't see it.
People come through the doorway.
Hand motions. Okay, we'll go on to item 4D, appeal of Kristen Kramer of Planning Commission's approval of special permit 20,003 to allow a community unit plan for up to 192 dwelling units with waivers to setbacks, lot area, and lot width on property generally located at the southeast corner of Old Cheney Road and South 93rd Street. For the record, I would like to note we have received one email for the project from Jackie Egan, and we have received several emails in opposition from Wayne and Marlene Jansen.
I can't see it, but it's, I would say we have received a letter in opposition from Jiang Ying Sun and Li Tan.
Thank you. Eric Pearson, James Wiederspan, Mary Ryman, Laura Cole, and Christine Arndt.
So I think in lieu of them publicly testifying, they have supplied us all with the same email in opposition and concern.
I had another one that came in to me personally late this afternoon with Joe Bolabosh came in and he opposed it.
Okay.
Good evening.
Good
My
evening.
name is Kent Seacrest, and with me today is Brad Marshall, engineer with Olson and Associates, and we represent the Pine Lake Development LLC. This matter ties to the new proposed high school that we plan to build out west. This is part of an option that purchase agreement talks about to reduce LPS's cash flow to pay for the Ringneck site. They're also, as part of it, exchanging and selling this parcel here tonight. And it's very important we hopefully get a decision from you tonight so we don't delay the closing of the West High School, because they are really in a hurry to get that under construction so they can open it in 2 years. I would just want to point out to you that I think the opposition is basically a fear of density that you will be hearing tonight. This is an approval of a CUP which allows for the current zoning to stay in place. We are not rezoning this property to a higher density. We are just merely trying to do a community unit plan under the current R3 zoning. And this is the same R3 zoning that we zone all the new growth areas of Lincoln. Vintage Heights neighborhood, which we are an infill project, is also zoned this R3 zone, so there's no change in zoning across the board. R3 zoning allows 6.9 dwelling units if you try to go for the maximum. We are not going for the maximum of 6.96 dwelling units. Our average is 4.8 dwelling units per acre for this development. So we have the right to ask for 192 units. We are only asking for 133 total units. So we are leaving on the table 59 units that we do not want to build. The staff report did a good job. They talk about the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is calling for 4 things, and they feel our proposal meets all 4 criteria. One, we need to infill. This is a 20-some acre site that we have the opportunity to redo since LPS no longer wants it for a middle school. 2, they want to create multiple housing choices for neighborhood, not just single family, not just apartment, but things in between that will provide more market interest. 3, the comp plan calls for more density because infrastructure dollars are tight and we can get more dwellings for our limited infrastructure dollars as a goal. And 4 is the goal that people that live in single family in this neighborhood, give them a chance to have a new housing product when they're ready to become an empty nester, retire, or change of lifestyle calls for them. So we are less than our 3 CUP allows us. In addition, the comp plan calls for greater than 5 dwelling units per acre. We are less than what the comp plan calls for. We're at, again, 4.8. So that's an important part of this. You have a new Affordable Housing Coordination Action Plan. And while it talks definitely about low-income housing, it also talks about all types of income. There's a shortage in this marketplace. And part of the problem they point out in the study is we are not giving enough choices. And when we don't give enough choices, other than single family or apartments, we're not giving them the choice of duplexes, we're not giving them a choice of condos, we're not giving them a choice of smaller lots. It causes people not to move. And when they stay in their single family, they kind of affect the market because they're staying longer than they should and they're not passing it down, so to speak, to the next potential set of buyers. So that's been a problem. Our site has a big gas line easement going through it and a gas line. 7 acres is unusable and the health department does not want us to build. We could get more 40-some unit density off of that. We are not asking for that density. So the part that we have that's free of the gas line, we're still under the maximum CUP density for that as well. Brad Marshall is going to talk to you here in a moment about traffic. Bottom line is this land use pattern and density is less than a middle school, and that is why the city did not require us to do a traffic study. I just handed out to you a letter of support, again, support from the Neighborhood Association of Vintage Heights. They said they did their due diligence and recognized that what we are proposing is a lot better than what could have been proposed, and that they realize that given all the issues, that they are convinced that this is in their neighborhood's interest to support. So we have a letter of support from the Neighborhood Association on this plan. Planning staff is recommending support and approval of this. Your Planning Commission had a public hearing and heard opposition. They voted 7-0 in support of this project. And we stand in front of you in support of all the conditions. So we have no motions to amend. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any of your questions.
Are there any questions? Benny?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Seacrest, I was trying to take notes as you went along and I got overwhelmed. You talked about what's allowed in this development. 6.9 units per acre are currently allowed, but your building is less than that, and that number I didn't get.
4.8.
4.8.
6.96 is what the maximum CUP density is in an R3, and we're at 4.8. And the comprehensive plan calls for at least 5 acres, and we're below that at 4.8.
Thank you.
Richard?
The rest of the development, how was it built out? Was it 3 units per acre, or how many units are there in Vintage Heights per acre?
That's a good question that I don't know the answer to. However, they do have townhomes in this neighborhood, so they do have a mix of housing types. So they probably are higher than 3 dwellings per
There
acre.
are other CUPs in Vintage Heights?
Yeah. If that comes on, you will see what I call the townhome areas. So they are averaging probably more than 3 acres.
Are there other CUP projects in Vintage Heights?
I'm sure there are other CUP projects. I would assume it's very hard to do a townhome development without it being a CUP. So I would guess the bulk of those yellow areas are CUPs.
Any other questions? I have a few. Can you tell me a little bit about the fact that we're going to vote on it, and you will have approval to build up to 192. You said they're only planning on building 133 at this point in time, but in the future, are they planning on adding those 59 units on to the project?
I don't know where we would put them. If we changed our site plan in front of you is for 133. If we came in and wanted to increase, we'd have to come in and seek an amendment. So as far as I'm concerned, the site plan is the throttle to this development.
So some of the opposition is stating, this development is not in compliance with the vintage height overall development. They knew that a school was coming, and then absent the school, that means that ground is still subject to the same restrictions about building, and that was part of the opposition concern. Can you tell me
Sure.
why it's not applicable in this case, or
When-
why it's no longer applicable?
There are covenances out here in the neighborhood that apply to what I would call the homes you're seeing out there. The covenances were never put on the Lincoln Public Schools site, so that is free of covenances. But again, our density is not excessively higher. Our property values are not going to be lower. So we feel, even if the covenances had applied, that we're in character, but we do not have to comply with the covenances because they were not recorded against the Lincoln Public School site.
One of the letters or emails that came in that supports this project talked about, the wonderful diversity of housing choices that will be going into this development. But they also were really touting, like, this is great. This is going to be affordable housing and workforce housing. But then I saw the dollar amount that you're proposing. Is that doesn't, the range is $275,000 to $350,000. That doesn't look like it's really amenable to workforce housing, or?
I believe the state law on workforce housing defines that from 225 to 275. So we start at the workforce housing level. But again, this is not, how do I want to say it? This is East Lincoln. I wish I could say it was affordable markets out here to make it lower. But this is East Lincoln, and the developers and builders are here. They'll testify next, and you can talk to them about the market that they are driving towards. But I would think the opposition in the neighborhood would be extra excitable if our prices were lower.
Well, I think that possibly is the case, but the one person that's spoken for was wildly enthusiastic that happens to live in the area, saying, this is great, the diversity of housing stock, and specifically called out affordability.
Right.
And so this sounds like it's going to skirt the affordability issue somewhat. And the truth of the matter is, in every area of the city, there should be affordable housing. And that's sort of like the new urbanism. That's the way it always has been in the past. You
Right.
went from your apartment to your townhome to your single-family dwelling, and then you moved out to the suburbs. So they're trying to, create that opportunity of, advancement to a single family, should they have that choice. So I think the pricing is what is missing. And I understand your concern about the rest of the neighbors, but it seems like the person that spoke in favor of it was actually in the neighborhood, in supportive of that type of housing.
I wish we could get construction prices. We're having an affordability issue, as Roy's committee and others studied. Take the highest neighborhood, highest income group. There's not enough lots for them. So what happens is when they're this big and the market is this big, there's a gap. Well, the upper part, they move away, which we don't want. And the lower part, if you put them, means some of them have to go compete with the next income group down. And when you just keep doing that, you discover that it's not affordable to the degree we want it to be for all the income groups. And so this is one of the stresses of where we're introducing new housing products, small lots, townhomes, fourplexes, whatever. That is going to be cheaper than a traditional single-family house. It's not cheap, as you wished it would be, but it is much cheaper. So we are giving people choices between just a street apartment that they rent or the traditional single-family house. But ask your question of the builders. They're the ones that set the price.
And then, I know, Brad, you're going to also testify, so we'll ask the traffic questions. Okay, any other questions for Kent? Yes, Sandra?
One of the, a number of the folks who wrote in opposition cited school crowding as an issue, and I wanted to know if you had a response to that. Has LPS come forward and said that this will add too many children to the district? Is Cleft Corn going to be, are they at max? I don't know what their capacity is right now.
Derek Aldridge from Lincoln Public Schools here. I don't know if he was planning to testify, but
Well, I guess I just
he is here.
Forced his hand, right?
Richard probably knows the.
Yeah, I was around when we did Cleft Corn, and no, they're not at capacity yet. Maxie went to 6 sections, and so Maxie has got a lot of capacity in it, just down the street, 2 miles away. So Cleft Corn hasn't quite reached it yet. This will probably fill up Cleft Corn, but Cleft Corn has the right to expand to 6 units.
And there are 4 units?
They're a 4-unit school now, so there will be capacity out there for schools if needed in the existing schools.
Okay, well, that is good to know. The only other issue that has not yet been mentioned of the opposition was the bike trail, and I don't know if that's something I should address to Brad. Well, then I
Okay.
will.
Thank you.
Terrific. Any other questions for Kent? All right, we're going to welcome Brad.
Attorney.
Good evening, council members. Brad Marshall with Olson. So I wanted to hit 2 topics that are most commonly something that I talk about, drainage and traffic for the development. This development, Olson is actually involved with right at the beginning of Vintage Heights as it started building out. The entire subdivision was actually master planned for drainage. There are several detention facilities within the development itself, and this property did drain to it and was planned to drain to it. As you come up with a different plan than a school, for instance, as opposed to having a massive building and parking lot that you can collect. Now we have streets and homes that you are now starting to work into a design and how you were to accommodate that. So along the process, we did come up with a way to find detention facilities on site. It's kind of a doing something in double here, but we are adding detention and water quality, which is now a new standard that wasn't implemented several years ago. And so we actually have some redundancy then built into detention as as we work with Watershed and come up with new ways to analyze things and runoff from these facilities. So feel very good that we've created something here on the drainage side that is actually adding capacity to the system. The second being the traffic. 93rd Street, which was planned to be your main kind of collector for the development. It is classified as a local street, but a collector in the way it acts within the development itself. Now you'll have planned homes and driveways on 93rd Street and then a couple of streets that we were able to connect out to. You'll notice that there are no other connecting points within the development, as no streets were stubbed to it on the west or south, on the east or south ends of the property. And so the only street to connect to is South 93rd. So from the traffic perspective, we provided some high-level analysis to LTU to analyze what a middle school would have created and then what single-family homes are going to actually generate for the facility. So we saw over a 20% reduction from what a school would have been to single-family residences. And the big benefactor is the traffic generated in the mornings, where we actually saw a decrease of 85%. Parents are going to work and dropping kids off at school in the morning, where there's the overlap in peak trips generated to the site. Specific to your comment about the trails system, there was a staff comment for the trails. There is a master plan for the trails to be extended from what is out on 84th Street, what that looks like in the comprehensive plan now, just extending that from 84th to 98th, and working with Parks and getting several of those details worked out. We have determined that that could be a future location for a trail. And that's the way that the plan reads now. And so we would accommodate the additional right-of-way that would be planned on our side of Old Cheney. So
Okay.
that would be something that we would address with staff in the comment and provide the right-of-way for that extension in the future.
All right, thank you.
If there's anything else, well, I will mention just, and Kent had mentioned the pipeline plant area, which is all important. I did want to mention that we have been in contact with Northern Natural Gas, which is an ownership of that pipeline that goes through that easement. And they were actually really excited with the plans that we have shown there because of the setbacks, because of the PPA, and showing park space. And they have essentially, I haven't gotten their formal letter yet, but they have essentially blessed additional green space and trails and walking paths through that particular area with minimal grading. So we are hoping that that is acceptable to everybody. And that 6 acres, which is really on the south side, will be an outlot for the development, and that will have some amenities that would be planned through the HOA. There will be an HOA set up specifically for this development, for these 133 units, and then they would work with the greater HOA of Vintage Heights to become members of that also. And so if accepted upon, if the HOA accepts them as members, that would be a benefit to the overall Vintage Heights community there.
Are there any questions for Brad? Richard?
Yeah, a couple of questions. You said that your setbacks will be enough for the widening of it, Old Cheney plus a bike path.
Yes.
How wide is Old Cheney, let's say, between 70th and 84th Street?
It varies, because we did go through some of that discussion with Parks as we went through. It varies from anywhere from 50 to 60, which is your standard. I think in this general location, they would ask for 6 additional feet. When we asked the question more to be more responsible so that we didn't dedicate it now, and then that was unusable or unused, that the trail didn't extend in the future. And through a lot of thought, Parks and Rec stood by their comment and requested it, and we will comply with it.
Because that's quite a wide right-of-way on Old Cheney between 70th and 84th Street. And it looks like your property line here actually indents closer than the houses that are on either side, that are east of you.
And if we had to shorten those, so could we ask for a waiver for reduction of setback or some way to accommodate without changing the plan too much? The street there to the south, which is Mary Vale,
Right.
I believe, we're really held by that intersection location. We have to connect at 93rd and Mary Vale for those lots and continue that street to the east. But we had a couple of feet that we could play around with the lot depth that we had there, that we felt comfortable moving forward.
Because you'll have a lot of people in those townhomes
Right.
and
And-
probably building, and then the city comes along and there will be nothing they'll have to condemn then.
Nothing.
Okay.
Correct.
To build it the same width as they built Old Cheney up at,
Yeah. And,
okay.
and just going back to that, we recognize that, yeah, we would be wider right away than the properties to the east and to the west, and just making sure that that's where they wanted it to place. Old Cheney is an unimproved roadway, arterial roadway right now, and no current plans in the CIP to improve it.
Look like even down the way where there's a townhome sections down there where they built a road into the right of way for their townhome section. That was kind of interesting. What was that? You probably don't have an aerial there, do you?
I don't have that shown.
Okay.
I do know what you're talking about, though.
It's just north of the outlots and south of, is that what you're referring to,
Yeah.
Richard? It just seems like,
Be
how do
over
they
on
connect?
about- It's Sand Hills Court.
Mm-hmm.
Go over there. They actually build that out into the right-of-way. But, and, you know, the traffic count in the Old Cheney needs to be brought up to urban standards. Right now, it is just your basic blacktop with added turn lanes as you go along. It's pretty rough as you come off the main road onto a turn lane and then back. And some of the complaints that they had, the neighbors had, is actually being caused by the roundabout because they're spacing traffic out so well that it's just a constant stream of traffic, so they won't having a tough time to cross. And I don't know how you fix that without putting another roundabout here, another light. Maybe that'd be good. We use a traffic light for once instead of a roundabout.
And we did take on questions why we didn't add another street out to Old Cheney, but per the access management policy, we would not
Allowed
meet.
to.
Yeah, we would not meet any type of requirement to add another street out.
Any other questions? James?
Yeah, so I'm a therapist, not an engineer. So can you please explain what goes into the traffic study and how you came to the conclusion that there will be less traffic in the area with it being a middle, with it not being a middle school?
So their trip counts, and we basically just utilize trip counts for the particular uses. And so the IT manual is basically a manual that our traffic engineers use for generated uses, and so you have middle schools and elementaries and high schools that all generate different types of traffic because you have different levels of people driving to them for drop-offs of children. And middle school, you might have more walkers or so forth like that. And so we just ran that straight with a middle school and the size that we use several comparison size middle schools in East Lincoln. And then with 100, we actually use 131, which is our current site plan for single-family uses.
So what size was the middle school that was supposed to go in there?
It was about, let's see if I actually have that. 750 students.
Okay. And then another question I have is, so from what I understand, there's no plans to make improvements onto Old Cheney with this development going in?
Correct.
So then if there were improvements that need to be made, who does that cost fall on to?
That's a good question. So Old Cheney being an unimproved arterial is part of the original agreement as we understand it, because LTU asked the question, which I believe went to law, and there was, well, what do would this warrant a change to the agreement to add turn lanes or something to that sort, some type of improvement safety measure, and with their actual reduction, and law department could probably weigh in here if they needed to, but with their actual reduction, it did not warrant any type of new requirements to be implemented or to ask the applicant to provide.
And I'm not sure if you already addressed this or not, but I know that there were some concerns about watershed management. Can you just speak on that a little bit more?
I think from the general comments, I think we've worked through it and worked with Watershed to address all of those. Water quality is being implemented, and like I said, we're actually, the facilities that were designed years and years ago probably were not large enough to carry like larger storms, and so we've actually added a detention facility on site that would reduce those flows for the 100 years and keep that out of the streets, if you will.
And I guess the last question that I have is, it mentioned in here that residents will be informed that this is within the 100-year floodplain?
Actually, that's news to me.
Okay.
No, none of the property. There's 100-year calculations and 100-year floods. So, like a mapped regulatory floodplain model, this property does not have any of that on it.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Richard?
Real quick, well, nothing's real quick anymore. this basically is on top of the ridge almost, right?
Yeah.
And it's not going to be sewered back to the east. It's only going to be sewered to the west.
Yeah,
So it has nothing to do with the lift station that's currently out there?
correct.
Okay.
It does not.
And the stormwater.
And the
We're all-
stormwater.
On the stormwater will all go back east, so it'll all end up in Antelope Valley.
Yep. The stormwater actually goes to a facility that's just to the southwest of this property. And yes, the lift station that was put in several years ago, this does not connect to that. Simply.
Any other questions for Brad?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, sorry.
Go ahead.
One of the other concerns by the neighbors was the parking.
Mm-hmm.
And parking along 93rd Street. Will there be parking in front of all these townhomes allowed, or do we
It
know that?
could be, and maybe the fear would be, well, typical residential street is 27 feet wide, and if you park a car on both sides of the street, you basically have one lane to pass through. So on this particular, on 93rd, you do have 6 additional feet in width, and I believe LTU testified at Planning Commission that said that right now there are no restrictions for parking. The city would have the ability to restrict parking on one or both sides of the street if they ever chose to do so.
Those townhomes will have garages that face on 93rd and driveways?
Correct, they would. So
There, I mean, what's the parking density then for the whole place? Looks like you have some outlot parking areas.
we, for townhome units or something smaller than 35 feet, we have to show that you can actually provide one additional for every 2 units that you have there. And so what we've been doing recently, although this doesn't have anything to do with 93rd because those duplexes are wider than 35 feet, we do provide an exhibit to planning department showing that they can adequately park on the street or not. That we are, like on the 5-plex units, we are providing, as those are rear entry, they'll have a driveway actually built behind it, and then the garages will be to the rear of the homes. There's going to be additional parking that are going to be planned for those specifically because those are some of the tighter units that are on the site.
In the outlot F, that's all drainage to the south?
Yes. Well, the outlot F being the
Playground?
playground or the amenity, some of the amenities, and so they're going to be, it will be graded, and grassed. There could be sports fields. There could be, some things that the developer has proposed to add if they are accepted into HOA. For instance, they would add the parking lot down there. We realize that that's not within walking distance for a lot of residents within Vintage Heights, and to get that benefit, they may be able to get in their cars and drive to it and have a place to park that's not on the street.
Okay. And then you said something maybe I didn't quite understand, was you said some of your parking density or calculations were cars parking on the street.
Yeah.
On 93rd, you're counting cars being able to park on 93rd
We didn't
Street.
count anything on 93rd
Okay.
because those lots are not that, small enough. The concern is you start getting lots that are 35 or even smaller, and then you have a driveway leading to those, and that driveway takes up your entire frontage, and there's nowhere for visitors to park, and so they start parking elsewhere or in front of other residences. On 93rd, there's not that concern because they are wider lots.
Okay.
I will mention one last thing.
I have a question for you, too.
The density calculation, as Kent referred to it. And we work with planning, and I would call it standard protocol, is to identify the maximum density that you're allowed. And we have the proposed units. And so what is, I guess my interpretation is, what is allowed by code, then there's allocated and unallocated. So we are allocating, by this plan, 133 units. Those unallocated are just the remaining units that were within the development. And if we were to exceed that, or I believe we go into those unallocated number of units, I believe we would have to actually come back and ask for those. So there is, if you ask for some protection for, if we just come back and we start adding 65 units to this plan, we would have to come back and ask for those unallocated to be allocated into the plan
As an amendment,
as an amendment.
as amended. I have a question about the traffic. Back to the traffic on 93rd Street. And some of the letters, emails in opposition were, the concern is that it's already a challenge to try to make a left turn and head west on Old Cheney. And you said that this development, because of its density, does not even trigger that. If the school were to have gone in there, would that have triggered improvements to Old Cheney or some type of traffic slowing, controlling at that intersection?
I probably didn't do a very good job of explaining it, but I believe that's why they didn't ask us, is because if a school did go in under the current agreement, there would not be any improvements. That would
Wait,
be,
say it again.
there would not be any improvements required by a school being developed on this property. And so as an extension, we're doing something that does not increase the traffic, and so they're holding us to that same standard.
Right, but, so you're saying that if the school went there, the school would not be held to that standard of asking for additional traffic control measures?
Correct.
What percentage of decrease of traffic did you calculate from going from the school down to this type of development?
On
What was it?
on a daily basis, 22%.
22% decrease in traffic.
Correct.
Okay.
That was the point. Pardon me for almost interrupting, but that was the point. I was trying to want to make sure that based on your traffic modeling, you thought that the school had more traffic, 22% more traffic than the residential development. And if the city planning did not have a requirement for a left turn lane for the school, they have not asked you for a left turn lane for residential development.
Correct, yes. It was, any improvement on Old Cheney or 93rd have not been included in the conditions that were approved
Okay.
by Planning Commission. I do have just general figures, if you're curious at all, of the number of people that would be included on a day-to-day basis. So we have.
Do you mind expanding that?
Like, we can't see.
Yes, absolutely.
Zoom in a bunch.
That's brightness.
Yeah, there we go. Did that last time.
There you go.
There we go.
Fantastic.
Okay.
So I do have elementary, but disregard that as it's applicable for a middle school as well. So 750 students, like I said, a daily, over 1,400 trips. So with what's proposed in the CUP is about 1,100 on a day-to-day basis. So you're reducing over 300 trips to the site. And like I said, the big one is the 85% reduction on the morning trips, because you just don't have that massive inflow that you would at an elementary school.
Does anyone have any further questions of Brad? Oh, okay, terrific. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the other room that would like to come in here to testify on this item?
Perhaps someone from the school district?
School district, okay. Good evening. Thanks for coming.
Doug Croker, I'm one of the builders that's going to be building over here, and I'm only doing the townhomes, not the single families. And so right now I'm just finishing up our 18th and 19th townhome in Village Gardens, and the price range was from $249 to $399. And everything we have built there has sold like within a week. And so I think there's a great need for that price range, maybe not the upper $399, but that maybe, $375 to $275 down in that range. And I think this project would be very similar to that, the diversity, the architectural styles, and that kind of thing. And I did bring a couple of what the duplexes you were talking about on 93rd, if that's
It'll come
the
up.
right way. Yeah, there we go. So this is what I'm planning on doing along 93rd Street. It's a 1,500 square foot ranch, finished basement, probably in the 325 to 335 range, something like that. And along Old Cheney, we're doing a threeplex plan. They're 2,100 square feet, probably in the 290s, somewhere in there. And their backs all be along Old Cheney. And then we have one more larger style duplex townhome that we're looking at that would be more inside the development, probably a little bit bigger than that first duplex I was showing you, probably about a 1,800 square foot ranch, maybe 350, 375. And because we'd got a lot of complaints on the quality of what we were doing, that's kind of why I wanted to kind of show that we're not, you know, just building a square, you know, house with siding or whatever, something that's kind of comparable to what's in Vintage Heights. So I don't know if you have any questions, I guess.
Yes, Richard.
Go. Did you say you're building some now in
Yeah, so I'm just finishing up in Village Gardens.
Village Gardens?
Yeah, yeah. So this, I think this whole development is similar to that. That's kind of why I was drawn to that. It's almost impossible to find townhome lots in Lincoln. It's just really, really tough. The high end, there's stuff, and I think the low end, there's a lot of competition in that lower end, like below 250. But this middle range is just, I think that's why they sell so fast. There's such a need for that. And then I have one now, this threeplex we're doing at 55th and L. There's a little tiny historic district there, and I kind of bought the lots from the guy who developed that. And so that kind of had to be approved by the historic department. So I'm just building the same exact thing just because I have the print and everything and kind of like the way it looked and all that. So, but, yeah.
Terrific. Are there any questions? Thank you very much for
Thank you.
coming down to testify. Is there anyone else in the other room that would like to come forward and testify? This kind of feels like The Price is Right. Come on down. It takes a while to come down or come into this room.
Thanks for having me. Marty Fortney, 3600 Calvert Street. I'm the one building the cottages. And I've been building in Lincoln since '92, and I'm the past president of Home Builders in 2002. And that was the year that we did the impact fee, so that was a memorable year. And I would tell you that I think I'm on 400 plus homes, but I would tell you that going through the 80s and 90s, it was more and more and more. Having gone through 08 and survived, it's less, but it's, give me something nice. I had something a little less. I want something a little smaller, less money. So you all approved a project very similar to the interior part of it about 2.5 years ago at 35th and Superior called Garden View. And just to give you a report on that, because the layout concept is what we've brought forward with the other developer here at Vintage Heights, we've had an overwhelming success for that, I believe. Our goal, we just finished our first year. Last year, our goal was to sell 16 homes. We sold 27. And it's difficult to get a subdivision started, but now that we have something to show people, and you're welcome to drive by, and we've let the neighbors and the other developers be able to go up there and see how the lot layout feels and works. I would tell you, just some statistics here. The first 32 homes, we're just finishing the last 4 homes here. There's 12 townhomes and 20 cottages. Out of those 20 cottages, 90% of them are first-time home buyers. The numbers are relative on the north side versus the south side. It probably ranges between 30 and 40,000 difference, primarily because of land cost. Our buyers, our first-time buyers, are exclusively 30 years and under, and they're buying for the main 3 reasons is price and that they're not attached. These folks are coming from apartments, and they get tired of that, hearing that noise. That's what they don't want. We've provided HOA services for all the single family as well as the townhomes, and they don't want to mow their lawn any more than our buyers that are 60 and over to want to do it. So they appreciate it, and that service is hard to find for the single-family home. So to get consistent lawn views and consistent appearances on the outside, that's why we included the association fee. And we have to carefully consider that because it's $25 per month, which is about $15,000 in buying power. It's a big number. The third reason is community. That's why we have the 7 acres here on Vintage Heights. Up on the north project, we had a little more space to work with. We incorporated a 30-acre working farm. of which we're just now putting the trail system in. It's going to be pretty cool, and that's a big attraction. People want, they don't want just their own yard because they don't really want to maintain it. These are the buyers that we're selling to, but they want a place to run, take their dogs. We actually had several requests for an animal run, a fenced-in area on the 7 or 8 acres that we're doing in Vintage Heights, so we're looking at that concept too. The association was in favor of that, where some of the other residents could use that service as well. And then the townhome mix is basically, for us, has been 60 and over, and I think that having a cross-generational living conditions or subdivision is smart. I've done 55 and older, and I think this works much better just because there's wisdom with youth. I think it's a smart piece of business to have. I would say too that on the south, and so for us on this project at Vintage Heights for this properties, they're going to be between about 1,200 and 1,650 square feet. The 1,200 square foot unit, we could be about 240. I think the average is probably between 250 and 275. Those are the numbers you've been hearing. That's for the single family home. And it's primarily because of the density that we put in there. We're going to have the option of having a basement or no basement. Up north, we had no basements at all, and that really helps on the price. That's another 25 or 30,000 minimum. So I think with the values that we're presenting, we don't want to get too much of a big window between the lowest and the highest price units in the new subdivision. I would say too that I remember when Ravenwood was built, and I think Bob and Margaret did a nice job for that. They were, I'm sure that some of those neighbors thinking, you know, why are these people across the street building a $400,000 house? What an embarrassment, right? And I say that reluctantly because in terms of the first-time home buyers, I am an advocate. It's what I do for a living, and I've done most of my home building for first-time home buyers, and their voice is minimal because they get out of college with $100,000 in debt. They're stuck in an apartment. If you look at the apartments that are being completed in the last 5 years, it's outpacing single-family homes. I think that's an embarrassment for our city, personally. So I think having an affordable option that's done correctly, and you're welcome, anybody welcome to come up north, I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. We're doing all the exteriors, they're coordinated colors. They're not faddish colors. On the insides, we're doing granite tops, tile backsplashes, the same finishes that my builders are doing in $400,000 house. They're very similar. So vinyl planking floors, all the nice carpets. So when you get into the crown moldings and the fireplace and so forth, that's where it's raising the price. We're not doing a lot of that, so that's keeping the price down. I would also say that, interestingly enough, on these cottages here, just one last statistic that I didn't realize because I had not built in that price range. On the north side, we started at $190 for a single-family house. That is unheard of. There is no home for the least expensive home we could find in Lincoln was $235 at the time. So that includes all the way out to Northwest 48th Street. And so our price range now has crept up to about $205 with land prices and holding costs, but we're between about $205 and $240, $250 on the north side of town. So in terms of comparison on the south side, I would say to you that Rick Kruger's subdivision, the name has escaped me, I haven't built on the south side for a long time, but that has...
1 minute.
Thank you. Those homes right there would be a typical type subdivision where you have symmetrical lots facing the street, and what we're doing with the cottages are asymmetrical, where we have common space. We orientate the houses so that we don't have windows looking into each other. It's very critical. So when somebody wants to buy a particular model, they have to look at a lot. They don't get to choose a lot and then put a house on there. I decide that so that we don't have that conflict. Those homes in Rick Kruger subdivision are wonderful homes down there, but I'm not seeing any less than 300. And that's for a 2-stall garage. You get a 3-stall garage, you're looking at 320, 330. So it is embarrassing to say that affordable housing is $250 minimum. I'm sad to say that's a lot of money. But in terms of the cost that's happening, that is where we're at. Because I remember selling my first house in Lincoln here, we sold it cash for $99,950. Right off Pine Lake and 56th Street. So we're doing the best we can with the lot size that we have, but we had a strong presence in last year. Any questions I can answer?
I have to tell you, I have seen the work on the north of Superior. Those homes are lovely. They're just adorable. And our good friend who's a high school teacher bought one, and it is such an efficient use of space, and it's really amazing the way that you have them positioned so that they do have that full feel of a single family home, because they're a single family home. But, you know, like you said, he doesn't have a basement, and so, but it's still an amazing home. Yeah.
If we took that home
Yeah.
with a basement right now in Vintage Heights, it would be about $255 to $265. So.
Great homes. Oh, James, you had one?
I just wanted to echo Jane's statement. I mean, I drove around 35th and Superior also, and they look excellent. You did a really good job.
Appreciate
So
that.
thank you for bringing that to Northeast Lincoln. I really appreciate it.
It's really wonderful. Much needed, so thank you. Yes, Richard?
One quick question for you. What constituted being a cottage? Why do you call them a cottage? Is it more just an industry
Yep.
name, or?
Yep, it's, we actually have, we had people starting with tiny home, which is like, wait a minute here, you know, that's normally 350 square feet or less. That's a whole different program. Yeah, so, and I think that would be cool for some people, and if we could find a way to finance that for the work, for people could get into a housing and make money with appreciation, that'd be a great start, but I haven't been able to figure out a way to do that. The cottages just denotes a smaller, more friendly atmosphere. We also have a villa model that denotes, like a cottage, we might have a 2-bedroom version, and a villa is a 3-bedroom version, meaning it's more grandeur. It's probably 150 square feet bigger, Richard.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Because I've heard a lot of villas coming online.
Yes, sir.
Thoughts
Yeah.
of people trying to do those. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Terrific. Thank you very much for
Thank you.
coming down to testify.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Is there anyone else in the other room that would like to come in and testify on this item? Now's your chance.
It's coming.
Great.
1, 2.
Good evening.
Hi, I'm Kristen Kramer. I live at 9210 Rockland Circle. I'm here in opposition of this development here. I think we've already heard a lot of the opposition points that I was going to bring in, but if you'll humor me, I'll just read my prepared statements here.
Well, we just wanted to assure you that we did read all your emails.
Thank you.
And we listened to your concerns.
Thank you. I am formally objecting to the proposed development as it currently stands for this 93rd and Old Cheney development. Of course, the reasons I've cited are traffic issues, neighborhood safety, aesthetics of the neighborhood, and risk of reduction in our property values currently. When we met in January with Olson and Associates at a church, they had an informal meeting for the homeowners of Vintage Heights to go and look at their plan. And so I believe it was Brad Marshall. He had, some nice, beautiful pictures up there of a simplified version of what's going in there. And it left off a lot of details, and it also had some things on there, like some green space that's currently over the pipeline. Just wanted to point out that the pipeline runs all the way through Vintage Heights, I believe, not just on that space between 93rd and, across the end of Forest Glen. It also continues through from on the west part of 93rd all the way to 88th and so on, and there's currently nothing in that space. It's completely open. There's signs up there saying, don't develop anything on this. There's a pipeline underneath. It could be dangerous. So just wanted to point that out. I'm not sure if they're planning on using that for anything or if they are leaving that up, but right now, currently, there's green space throughout the subdivision that's not being used for anything. On the simplified version, they also had left off the driveways. So I went up to Mr. Marshall after the initial meeting and asked him, I'm kind of new at reading these things, so I said, the back of these townhouses here, is there going to be a fence between them and Old Cheney? And he said, oh no, those are the front of the townhouses, not the back. So there's going to be driveways coming out. And I wish I had my husband has the photo, but there are 6 lots currently between 93rd, or I'm sorry, between Maryvale. Oh, thank you. Oh, that's not the one I wanted to add on. Thank you. Yes. Should I put it the other way? So you can see between Maryvale here and Simi Court here, there are 6 lots and 1 driveway coming out on the west side of 93rd. With the proposed development, there are currently 18 lots, 3 times as many, between Maryvale here on the north and Simi Court on the south. And I'm very concerned about these driveways that are coming out between here and here, where there are currently 6 lots. There's planning to be 18 lots, 9 duplexes, each unit a separate lot. So there will be 18 driveways coming out. So I am very concerned about the increase of traffic there. And what that's going to do to 93rd Street being the major inlet and outlet of that neighborhood. Of course, my son, I have school-age children that do go to Clefcorn, and he likes to ride his bike, so I'm concerned, very concerned about the traffic safety of the neighborhood with all of the driveways coming out to 93rd as well. I agree with a lot of things that Marty said. I think that the homes are nice. If I would have wanted to live in a development like that, that would have been great for me. But I did not want to live there. My husband and I are a little bit more established. We bought our home 5 years ago. We wanted bigger lots for our children, our family, which is why we chose the neighborhood that we did. We were kind of excited about a middle school coming in and the possibility of that. My kids could walk across the street to go to school. So having this change from that, we would prefer to see single-family homes in there with more consistent lots. It's not that we're against the development, it's just that we want it to be more consistent with the integrity of the neighborhood. And there are quite a big variety of homes in the neighborhood as well. We do have, like they said, plenty of CUPs already. We have a lot of townhomes in there. They say there's not a lot of choices, but there's a lot of townhomes to the north of Old Cheney. There's some on Forest Glen. There's some on the corner of 93rd and Foxtail. They have a whole bunch off of La Roche, Franciscan, down in Allegheny Terrace. There are tons of townhomes around, as well as some of the new developments that they're putting in. There's a row of townhomes being put in between La Roche and 84th Street off of Foxtail as well. And then my parents actually just bought a townhome south of Highway 2 back in the Dunroven subdivision there, and they have plenty of choices there. They wanted something that was a little less than the $275 price point, so they were able to find that there, although there were plenty of options as well. Most of them that they looked at were in the $225 to $250 range. So the developer says he wants to offer a variety of homes. We do feel that there are already plenty of variety in the neighborhood and around that, and it keeps developing. And we also, wanted to bring up the affordable housing part. I think they kind of already touched on that, but $275 to $325 is their initial price point, and we just felt like that's not a reason to be affordable. That's not affordable. So other than that, we don't really see any reason why they would like to plop this down in the middle of our subdivision other than money, having the most lots possible. And obviously, it's smart business, but in our opinion, it does not maintain the integrity, the safety, the design of the neighborhood, and we would like to see it reflect the homes and the sizes of lots in the area. So thank you very much for allowing me to come forward to you today.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions or anything?
Are there any questions for Ms. Kramer? Yes.
Yeah, I have one. Do you see, with the being harder and harder to get out onto Old Cheney from 93rd to make a left, are you seeing anybody deciding to go down Foxtail or that way to
Yes.
cut through the neighborhood, basically, to get out there?
I do. I think it's easier personally when I make my Walmart trips. I go the back way through the neighborhood simply because it's convenient and I don't want to deal with the traffic on Old Cheney. And I know that they say with the middle school it's more. Well, it could be even less. It could be less than what it is right now, or what they're planning on doing right now as well. So I think that having a fewer amount of homes there in that subdivision would certainly alleviate that issue of getting out onto 93rd for now, or out onto Old Cheney for now.
Okay.
Thank
I
you,
have one
Sandra.
question. First, thank you for coming down to share your viewpoint. I got a little confused when you were talking about the townhome driveways. And one, did you say that there would be driveways exiting onto Old Cheney?
No, onto 93rd.
Onto 93rd. And then
93rd
when you
only.
counted the existing driveways onto 93rd on the west side,
Yes,
you said there were 6, and
one.
there's just the one driveway, and then there's cul-de-sacs that come out.
Yes.
Okay, so just the one. Okay.
And obviously, it's not up to us, but if it were, we would like to see some kind of mirror of the cul-de-sacs or something avoiding those driveways. If they could even turn those homes around and have it so that the backs of them are at 93rd, that would also alleviate a lot of the problem with the traffic and parking on 93rd.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
Okay, thank you so much for coming down.
Thank you. I'll leave that up for my husband. I think he's next.
Okay. Please come on up.
Good evening, City Council members. It's Jeremy Kramer, 9210 Rockland Circle. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I think most of the issues or the appeal that are against have been brought up, but there's a few things I'd like to recap. The first thing is there's a slide that I'd like to bring up that shows the community unit plan. Do you have that slide? Okay, so I throw this slide up just to give you the orientation and a better picture of how many units and what this looks like compared to a slide I'll throw up next. So in this slide here, you're going to see, I believe there's 133 homes, or basically 132 that's up here. This street right here is 93rd, okay? And these are the 18 units right along here. And so if you can imagine on trash day what that might look like, with most people having 2 to 3 trash cans, that could be up to 54 trash cans sitting out on the street. And what kind of congestion that might create in the morning for folks leaving to go to work, or people coming into the neighborhood, or kids coming out of that, or families coming out of that development to take their kids to school, because they'll be coming out of the 2 entrances right here and right here, come out after taking their children to school. What kind of bottleneck and congestion is that going to cause, and what's that going to create? Next slide I'd like to show is hopefully you can hear me okay. This would be facing to the west, and this would be to the east. Now, I took a snip of this picture, with this being 93rd Street running down the middle. Those pretty much mirror each other. Currently, on our side of the neighborhood, with this picture, you're going to see there's less than 80 homes right now. Okay, there's less than 80. Their projection, if I can mirror this for you real quick. It's almost double what we're looking in there, what they have the ability, 190 some homes. So I don't feel that that holds the integrity of our neighborhood or our property values when you put it into perspective. It was brought up before that there are many options and availability of housing within the neighborhood. Is it really necessary to build that many homes in that small of a space? I don't feel that it is. Next piece I'd like to bring up is the survey that was done 20 years ago, and there hasn't been one done since. I think we know now, because they haven't done one, nor is the developer required to do one, that when the time does come, it's going to be the local citizens of Lincoln that have to pay for this to be done. Our tax dollars, your tax dollars, to pay for this. I don't think that's fair to the citizens of Lincoln. Next, my question would be, during this meeting and the last meeting, the questions about the traffic issues were brought up to Mr. Olson. So my questions to the council is,
1 minute.
what makes Mr. Olson qualified to make this determination? Does he work for the city department? Does he work for the road department? What training or documentation does Mr. Olson provide that shows he's qualified to perform this study? And why are we taking his word for it? So in closing, I'd just like to finish up, because I know my time is short, is that this new development will not protect our property values, but will rather decrease our values of our existing homes. The development also requires setbacks. We're dropping our standards to allow this development to come in. Setbacks and waivers to bring this type of development into our neighborhood. There is no reason why single-family 1- and 2-story homes cannot be put in. They're already being put in on the backside of the neighborhood. Why can't this development be completed and the rest of our neighborhood be built with 1- to 2-story homes? And another point I'd like to bring up, through this whole thing, the developer has had Plan A. It's always been Plan A. Is there a Plan B? Is there any changes that they would be willing to submit to make changes to satisfy our needs and things that we'd like to see done? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Mr. Kramer? Okay. Thank you again very much for coming down.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the room out there that would like to testify on this item? Okay.
Good evening, Derek Aldridge on behalf of the Lincoln Public Schools. And I heard from outside that you had asked maybe if Lincoln Public Schools representative would be here. I wasn't prepared to testify about anything in particular, but I'm glad to answer any questions that you might have.
I think I was the council person with the question. It had to do with change from a school to residential development, and the comments from folks in opposition was that this would cause for school crowding. I do believe my fellow commissioner, Mr. McGinnis, who has some experience with the school board.
A little bit.
Just a little bit.
But I was curious if LPS had anything to say about school crowding and the timing of that moving from a 4 to a 6 unit school. Will this cause the move to a 6 unit faster? Is that within your plans?
I don't believe LPS is prepared to speak to anything like that right now. It's not, a middle school in this area is not on their 10-year comprehensive plan. So I think this would have been surplus property. I don't believe they had any concerns necessarily in this area. I think they've tried to plan ahead in the future for where student population centers would be for the existing schools that they have. You know, they have Maryland Moore Middle School to the south, and they have Lux Middle School up to the north and west of there, which I think are the feeders for this area.
Okay. Are there any questions for Mr. Aldridge? Any more questions?
Could you maybe talk a little bit about the necessity for this project to move forward for LPS?
This particular project on the Vintage Height, what we call the Mortensen parcel, this parcel was an option that was extended to Ringneck as part of the purchase of the Ringneck site up on Northwest 48th and West Holdridge. It was an option that was provided to Ringneck. It was basically a trade or part of an offset for Ringneck, who has assigned it to Pine Lake Development LLC. LPS is still purchasing the Ring Neck site, period. They are going to purchase that site. This was an option that would allow LPS to reduce the amount of taxpayer dollars that would go out to purchase the Ring Neck site, but they will still purchase the Ring Neck site regardless of what may or may not happen with this. It was simply an option for Ring Neck. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Wonderful, thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Thank you
For
for
your time.
coming down and being with us this evening. Okay. Are we ready for rebuttal? We are. Come on down.
Sorry, I'm dragging this. Kent Seacrest again. Just want to hit the high points. The comprehensive plan calls for infill, higher density, and multiple housing choices to create more characters in our neighborhoods. We feel we are hitting that. Your Affordable Housing Coordination Action Plan indicates that we're lacking townhomes and small single-family lots. We're addressing that for purposes of hitting something that's in between where the market lies today along the way. 93rd Street, you heard about concerns. Well, it is 6 feet wider than a normal residential street, so that will allow for what I call more movement of cars, and if parking needs to be eliminated, transportation has that ability to eliminate parking if that's an issue. If they do eliminate parking, we have parking on site to meet our needs, so we will not be parking in anybody's abutting streets along the way. Survey, we have done detailed stormwater survey results. We know the topography, we know the layouts, we've shown it to the staff, and we have worked that out with a plan that improves the stormwater in this neighborhood. This is a development similar to Village Gardens and Fallbrook. Unfortunately, they didn't have to do an infill. But I think those neighborhoods have proven their success with adding true character to the area along the way. And so we just think the real issue might be, we've talked about it, Old Cheney and 93rd Street. If you remember, when we did the impact fee facilities, we declared that the city of Lincoln, not the development community, was responsible for arterials intersections. 93rd and Old Cheney is an arterial intersection, and that impact fees are available. We will be generating impact fees. It will be up to your staff to decide what to do with those impact fees. Would I put $1 on the table that a roundabout might show up someday? I would put that. I think that will allow the neighborhood to circulate out more quickly and easily and safe along the way. We've talked about traffic. We're reducing traffic compared to the school. And the gentleman talked about, where's Plan B? It's hard for us to talk Plan B when Plan A has all the staff support. We've met every condition they have asked. Staff looked at 93rd Street and said it will work. We met the conditions along the way. And Planning Commission too, 7-0 said, you got Plan A, we like, go for it. So we feel we've hit it well, and the Planning Department's key statement was the proposed mix of dwelling types within a single development is consistent with the comprehensive plan, which calls for housing diversity. It helps create neighborhood character while providing a range of housing choices for residents of the city. This is the type of infill in terms of both density and variety the plan encourages with no significant impact upon the adjacent residents. That's your Planning Department's final conclusion. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any final sets of questions.
So one concern raised by Mr. Kramer was that the numbers that are calculated for the traffic, how did Brad Marshall come up with those numbers?
I had that written down and I went by it. As you know, Olson Associates is a highly respected firm, and they have a whole division of traffic engineers that do complex detail modeling, and they work closely with our transportation and utility department, and those models are talked about back and forth. So these were professionally well done. Brad Marshall, I don't think wants to claim to be the transportation engineer. He has other people within his shop. Brad's a civil engineer who's very knowledgeable about traffic, but he has other people behind him that help him with his conclusions on traffic.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Seacrest?
Marty Fortney wanted me to point this out. Up north in that development, 95% of the home dwellers have 4-year degree, have 4 years of college, 95%. And 35% of the homeowners up there have master's degrees. So it's a very smart neighborhood up there.
Lovely homes, too. Great,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Brad, did you need to do a rebuttal, or you're good? Okay, all right. I think we can move on to the next item because there's no one else back there.
Okay.
Voting session.
Yep, that concludes our public hearings. We can move into the voting session. We'll start with ordinances third reading. Item 5A, change of zone 19030, application of Bob Benish for a change from R3 to R4 residential on property generally located at the southwest corner of West Old Cheney Road and South Folsom Street, introduced by Washington.
So moved.
Second.
Pardon me?
This is resolutions.
No.
Oh, no, he's
We're on
correct. I
resolutions.
was reading ordinances third
Yeah,
reading.
Well,
we
you
haven't-
did. You
we
did.
haven't
Yes, you
voted
moved to
on it.
Need to go back to the
Thank you, Jeff.
4A.
You're right.
He's awake. We'll start with 4A, Comprehensive Plan Conformance 20001, application of urban development. This is the proposed amendment to the Lincoln Center redevelopment plan to add the 13th and O redevelopment project, introduced by Bowers.
So moved.
Second.
Introduced by Bowers, seconded by Christensen. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. 4B is Comp Plan Conformance 20002, application of Urban Development Director for a proposed amendment to the Lincoln Center redevelopment plan, the Antelope Valley redevelopment plan, and North 27th Corridor and Environs redevelopment plan to add the Greater Downtown Principal Corridors redevelopment project, introduced by Bowers.
So moved.
Second.
Introduced by Bowers, seconded by McGinnis. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Item 4C is the report of claims for the period of March 1st through the 15th, introduced by Bowers.
So moved.
Second.
Introduced by Bowers, seconded by Christensen. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Raybold? Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. 4D then is the appeal of Kristen Kramer of Planning Commission's approval of Special Permit 20,003. This is introduced by Washington.
So moved.
Second.
Introduced by Washington, seconded by Christensen. Any discussion? Richard?
Yeah, one, I'd like to say thank you to Kristen and Kramer and those neighbors that felt strong enough to bring this forward as an appeal. It's kind of why we're here, and it's nice to have them be able to come out and speak what they need to say. This is an area that I've known very well for a long time. My brother owned a good chunk of the ground for a long time, bought it from Mortensen. I've watched this area grow, kind of grew up out in that area with my family also, so it is interesting that, you know, and I do have some concerns, mostly about the parking and the density around 93rd Street. What I'm really looking forward, though, is for our LTU to come forward and start talking about improving Old Cheney. Yes. Because that is not a very safe street as it is, and it's going to even be more dangerous with this type of traffic. So I'm worried about the safety of a lot of the people that live out there trying to sneak on and off of Old Cheney. So that's something I think we need to look forward and see what comes up in the new CIP.
Any other comments?
Go first.
Thank you, Councilman Christensen. I just wanted to, again, echo what Mr. McGinnis said, that I do appreciate the public process. I'm glad that it feels like there were a lot of conversations, public meetings, a lot of information was shared. And I really appreciate hearing from all the residents in that area who felt strongly. But I also feel very strongly about the comprehensive plan and about the need to mix up housing stock and to add new styles of housing into neighborhoods, both for character, but also for a level of affordability in every neighborhood. And though this is not considered very, very affordable housing, it is certainly more affordable in the small size of lots and the structures than some of the other homes in the area. And for those reasons, I will be voting in favor.
Right.
Okay, so this is just to clarify for everybody, the easiest way to understand how we're voting here is if you in your mind just cross out appeal, most of the sentence up until special permit. All we're doing is voting up or down on the special permit. We're not voting on the appeal,
Right, I will be voting in favor of
the special permit.
special permit, yes.
Right, so that's how to understand any of these appeals. It's as if it never appeared before anybody at all. It's original here now. So a yes vote means to approve the project. A no vote would mean to disapprove the project.
Any other comments? I too want to thank the individuals that came down here to speak, and I also want to thank your neighbors for sending the emails. We know it's challenging times right now, and we want to really keep the safety of the people that would like to provide their comments to us first and foremost. And we just want to assure you that we did read all those emails in opposition, and we're grateful for hearing your side of this concern. Okay, let's vote.
Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Now we can move on to ordinances third reading. Item 5A, change of zone 19030, application of Bob Benish for a change from R3 to R4 on property generally located at the southwest corner of West Old Cheney and South Folsom, introduced by Washington.
So moved.
Second.
Introduced by Washington, seconded by Christensen. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. 5B is approving amendment number 1 to the annexation agreement for Southwest Village to provide for construction improvements for South Folsom Street and Old Cheney Road, introduced by Washington.
So moved.
Second.
Introduced by Washington, seconded by Christensen. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 5C is annexation 19004, application of Lincoln Federal Bank Corp. to annex approximately 50 acres of property generally located at the northeast corner of South 84th and Rokeby Road, introduced by Washington.
So moved.
Second.
Introduced by Washington, seconded by Christensen. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 5D, change of zone 19012, application of Lincoln Federal Bank Corp. for a change from AG Agricultural to R3 Residential and R5 Residential on property located at the northeast corner of South 84th and Rokeby Road, introduced by Washington.
So moved.
Second.
Introduced by Washington, seconded by Christensen. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Finally, 5E, approving amendment number 3 to the annexation agreement for the Rokeby Road Coalition, introduced by Washington.
So moved.
Second.
Introduced by Washington, seconded by Christensen. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Bowers?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Our resolutions on first reading are items 6A through C. Our ordinances on first reading are items 7A through D. Our pending list are items 8A through G.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Roy.
I would like to say to everyone, be careful.
And stay.
Remember the golden rule. And I move adjournment.
And wash your hands.
Second.
Second, move to adjourn by Christensen, seconded by McGinnis, and I do want to remind people we will not have public comment this evening because we want to keep everyone safe and well. And if you have comments, please email them to councilpacket@lincoln.ne.gov. Please call the roll on adjournment.
Christensen?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Bowers?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. We are adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.